Ngozi, he whispered, help me. She knelt slowly, her face unreadable. Ngozi's eyes held no pity, only the calmness of finality. Francis woke up that morning looking tired. He had slept late the previous night while the worms in his belly clawed painfully at his intestines. Was it his fault? He had tried everything he could to make ends meet, but it seemed his best was never good enough. He had gone to the food stall the previous day to ask if there was any vacancy he could fill, but Mama Risa, the food seller, had only stared at him with her wide eyes, sizing him up from head to toe without saying a word. Embarrassed, he left Mama Risa's stall and trekked home in his torn slippers and his stained shirt. He looked around the small tarpaulin hut he had built and sighed deeply. Today was yet another day of woe, and he had not a single penny in his pocket. He had to find a way to survive so he wouldn't die of hunger. He stood up from the floor, stepped outside and plucked a stick to chew. After spitting out the bitter residue, he washed his face with the rainwater from the night before and set out for his daily hustling. The market was already busy. Traders displayed their wares and trucks loaded with fruits zoomed past. Francis brightened as he picked up the fruits that fell from one of the trucks. God had blessed his morning with food. Francis! Francis! Someone shouted from the crowd. Francis looked up and saw a lady he didn't immediately recognize. She rushed toward him, shock and surprise written all over her face. Francis! What are you doing here? You look so unkempt. Francis stared at her intently and gasped. Ngozi. Tears streamed down his face as he repeated her name. He suddenly remembered how he had always tutored Ngozi back in school. How he had been the teacher's favorite because of his intelligence. Yet here he was now, unable to fend for himself or provide even the basic necessities of life. Ngozi held his hand and led him to a shaded spot. Talk to me, Francis. What is going on? She asked gently. Francis stared at his feet as he narrated all the ordeals he had faced since finishing secondary school. Life must have been really hard for you, Francis, she said softly. Then she ransacked her bag and brought out a business card. Reach out to me later this evening. Let's have a heart-to-heart discussion. Francis collected the card and watched as Ngozi turned and walked away. By evening, Francis borrowed the phone and reached out to her. She picked up after the third ring and directed him to her villa. Ngozi's villa was quiet when Francis arrived. The kind of quiet that made the earth feel heavier than usual. The security guard let him in after a short phone call, and a few minutes later, Ngozi appeared at the doorway smiling warmly. Francis, come in, she said, stepping aside. Her living room smelled of lavender and something faintly earthy. Francis couldn't place it, but it made him slightly uneasy. She offered him food again, hot jollof rice, fried plantain, chicken and cold water. He ate gratefully, unaware that this evening was the beginning of something that would change both their lives forever. Ngozi listened to him as he poured out his struggles again, his voice cracking with emotion. She felt pity, yes, but also a strange pull. Something tugging at her chest, an unexplained softness whenever he spoke. She shook it off. Over the next few months, Ngozi helped Francis transform his life. She gave him a place to stay temporarily, enrolled him in business training, bought him clothes, and eventually placed him in a managerial role in her new logistics branch. She was indeed happy to be of help to Francis. But something began to trouble her. Whenever Francis was around, she felt foggy, light-headed, easily convinced, easily softened. Even when he made mistakes she would have corrected, she found herself smiling, forgiving, excusing him. One afternoon, something happened that shook her to the core. Francis had asked her to approve a risky investment, a deal that made no sense on paper. Normally, she would have refused immediately. But as she sat across from him in her office, listening to his smooth, confident voice, she found herself nodding. Nodding! She stared at the contract in front of her, heart pounding. Why am I agreeing to this? Her mind screamed at her. This is reckless. Stop! Don't sign! Yet, her hand moved on its own, reaching for the pen. Her finger hovered over the signature line, trembling, and she felt a cold, unnatural pull guiding it downward. No, this isn't me, she whispered, her voice barely audible. She tried to pull back, to regain control, but her body ignored her will. Her hand pressed the pen to the paper. Francis smiled at her, completely unaware, or perhaps fully aware of what had just happened. Perfect, he said, leaning back in his chair. Ngozi froze, staring at the signed contract. Her pulse raced. Her palms were sweaty. This was not a mistake. I do not want this. My mind is not fully my own. A shiver ran down her spine. For the first time, she realized that Francis' charm, his influence over her, was more than persuasion. It was something unnatural, something that bent her will without her noticing. And in that instant, fear replaced pride. Fear that the very man she had rescued could slowly, deliberately take control of her life. It felt unnatural, like her mind wasn't fully her own. One night, she visited a prophetess her late mother once trusted. After listening quietly, the woman's face darkened. My daughter, someone close to you is using Otumoko charm to weaken your spirit. Ngozi's heart began to pound. Who? She whispered. The prophetess dipped cowries into a clay bowl, shook them, and poured them onto a red cloth. Her eyes widened. The person you lifted from the ground. The person eating your hand. The one you call Francis. Ngozi froze. The prophetess leaned closer, her voice dropping. He wants your throne, your company, your mind, your life. Ngozi left trembling. After that night, she watched him more carefully. The strange fog she felt around him, the way he looked at her too intensely, the way she suddenly agreed to decisions she normally wouldn't approve. It all made horrible sense. Francis, meanwhile, continued rising fast. Too fast. Staff feared him. Investors admired him. And Francis loved the power. Loved that Ngozi listened to him like putty in his hands. The charm was working. But charm alone wasn't enough for him anymore. He wanted everything. He wanted her company, her influence, her empire, and most of all, he wanted her gone. One night, after a major business meeting, he slipped into her private office. He poured a clear, odorless substance into a bottle of spring water, the same bottle she always kept on her desk. Tomorrow, he whispered to himself, tomorrow, everything becomes mine. But fate had plans his charm couldn't control, because that same night, Ngozi had already made up her mind. She had cried. She had prayed. She had battled with the betrayal. But the prophetess' final word echoed in her head. Save yourself before you complete what he has started. The next morning, Frances confidently watched as Ngozi entered her office, picking up her water bottle. But instead of drinking it, she placed it back down, untouched. She looked strange, calm, distant, almost cold. He didn't know she had been warned. He didn't know she had seen the water shimmer unnaturally under the light. He didn't know she had followed her instincts. That afternoon, she invited him to dinner, just like old times. "Francis," she said warmly, "I made something special for you." He smiled, believing she was fully under his control. He ate greedily, laughing, boasting, praising himself, imagining the empire he would claim soon. Then his laughter faded. His eyes widened. His breath caught. Ngozi watched silently as he clutched his stomach and collapsed, shaking violently. "Ngozi," he whispered, "help me." She knelt slowly, her face unreadable. "I lifted you from the mud," she said quietly. "I gave you everything. You thanked me with charm. You thanked me with poison. You wanted me dead." He trembled harder. She leaned closer, her whisper sharp as a blade. So I returned the greeting. Francis' vision blurred. His breath grew shallow. His hands went cold. And for the first time since he met her again in the market, Ngozi's eyes held no pity, only the calmness of finality. "You cannot destroy the one who saved you," she said. And then Francis' world went dark. Ngozi wiped her hands with a kitchen towel and stood over Francis' lifeless body. For a long moment she just stared, not crying, not shaking, just breathing, slowly, deeply, like a woman holding herself together by a single thread. But peace does not follow blood. By morning, everything began to unravel. The security cameras in her villa caught more than she intended. A guard on night duty, suspicious of the late visit and the heated tones he overheard, reviewed the footage before his shift ended. He found clips of Francis entering the villa healthy and being dragged out hours later by Ngozi's cleaner, wrapped in cloth, stiff and unmoving. The guard's conscience wouldn't let him rest. He reported it. Within 48 hours, Francis' body was found. An autopsy was ordered, and though poison leaves silent traces, it does not hide forever. The toxicology report came back flat. The presence of plant alkaloids consistent with deliberate poisoning. Detectives came to Ngozi's office. "Ngozi Okafo, we would like you to come with us for questioning." Her hands trembled. Her heart hammered widely, but she followed them calmly, her composure breaking only when they placed the evidence on the table. The footage, the autopsy, her messages to Francis, witness statements. And then the final blow. As security confessed. The police officer sighed. "Madam, this case is no longer simple." Ngozi lowered her head. She felt the walls closing in. For hours she was questioned, pressured, confronted. She defended herself at first, claiming self-defense, claiming fear. But the law does not bend easily. Not for emotions, not for betrayal, not for charm that cannot be proven. By evening, she was released on bail pending trial. That night, she sat alone in her large silent villa, the same place where she had rescued Francis, then killed him. The same walls that echoed with his laughter when he first arrived, now echoed with nothing but guilt. Her mind replayed everything. His broken state, her kindness, his betrayal, her fear, the poison burning through his veins. The last word, Ngozi, me. She pressed her hands to her ears and screamed. The next morning, the newspaper released early leaks. CEO suspected in murder of former employee. Poison confirmed. Trial expected to be high profile. Social media exploded. Her board members withdrew. Investors cut ties. Her company froze her accounts. Friends stopped answering calls. The world that once applauded her now spat her name like poison. She sat in her living room staring at the police summons for the official arraignment. Charge: first-degree murder. Possible sentence: life imprisonment. Her breath grew shallow. Her chest tightened. The idea of living in a cell stripped of dignity, stripped of control, stripped of everything she built, terrified her more than death ever could. She stood up slowly like someone carrying centuries of pain on her shoulders. She walked to her bedroom, opened the drawer beside her bed, took out the small brown bottle the prophetess had once given her for protection. Protection could be many things. She uncorked it, staring at the bitter concoction inside. Her hands shook violently, but she lifted it anyway. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "I saved the boy," she whispered, voice breaking. "And it destroyed me." Her knees grew weak. "I destroyed him too." Her strength failed. "I cannot survive the cage they want to put me in." Her voice dropped to a trembling whisper. "Let this be the end of both our curses." And Ngozi drank. Within minutes, her breathing slowed. Her vision blurred. The room spun. She collapsed beside her bed, her body limp, her eyes open but fading. When the police came at dawn to escort her for arraignment, they found her cold, still and gone. The case closed itself. 2 lives destroyed by desperation, betrayal and revenge. And the villa, once full of hope, became a silent tomb of secrets, regrets, and the haunting echo of what might have been seen. I hope you enjoyed this story. Kindly like, subscribe, and turn on the notification for more upload on this channel. Thanks for watching. See ya!